Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesdays. This is a weekly installment in which Michael K. Vaughan and I combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about the comic books on which we have misspent our separate youths. And the structure of it started on Michael's channel, where he had a regular feature called Epic Comic Book Wednesday, where he was just going to go through Marvel's Epic collections. Paperback full-color reprint volumes that are a little bit on the pricey side, but you get what you pay for. You get a lot in them. Lots and lots of issues reprinted. And the thing that differentiates the Epic collection from Marvel's hardcover Masterwork series that is ongoing is that the Masterwork series are progressing in strict chronological order. And the Epic collections don't. They bounce all around. You get a block of issues. Hopefully, I think the original design was that this would allow the Epic collections to chase runs on comics. This is a phenomenon, a feature of modern day comics that modern day, the last 80 years. This is a feature of comics that we've talked about on these Epic Comic Book Wednesdays many times. That is where the comic is burbling along, and then a new artist and a new writer, or some combination thereof. Sometimes both are new. Other times only one is new, and it sparks a synchronicity between the two that didn't exist before. Suddenly the issues become charged with a shared creative vision, even if the writer and artist don't like each other. That suddenly makes those issues more urgent to get at your local dry goods store in small town Iowa. Suddenly you realize such and such a comic is having a great run. That's what a run is. And they are, as you can tell from the name, they are a discrete phenomenon. They have a discrete starting point and a discrete ending point, after which things go to heck again, and you have to wait for the next really good run. The comic still has to go on, but the runs are what the fans wait for. And the writers and artists, I don't think, can predict ahead of time. I think the magic is actually unpredictable. And for a long time when I was reading comics, that whole concept was anathema to the whole experience of reading comics. The editors and the writers and the publishers of comic books, the last thing they wanted was even the slightest hint of a run. The idea back in ye olden days was that the comics were always the same. They didn't change. That was the whole point. So if you got a new writer, you made sure they wrote like the old writer. If you got a new artist, you made sure it looked exactly like the old artist, or as close as you could get. And the stories didn't change. The stories stayed the same every issue, issue after issue. In those ye olden days, that continuity was prized. It was a valuable part of the comic book experience for the readers. And then Stan Lee came along. And he invented a comic book world gradually, slowly. He didn't do it at first. He himself was a product of the older world that I'm talking about. But gradually, he created a comic book world in which all the stories were connected, in which the continuity was as seamless as he could make it, considering that you have one editor and a whole bunch of different writers, and in which the steady state nature of the stories was gone. All of a sudden, the stories could change. Were expected to change. It was hoped that they would change. And if you introduce that element, that the stories can change, they're not just going to be variations on a theme endlessly, then you inevitably introduce the concept of upping the ante. There's no way to avoid it. If you dislike now, suddenly, the idea of the Joker breaking out of prison and going on a madcap crime scheme that has a funny, inventive theme to it, to bedevil Batman and Robin until they figure out how to thwart him and he goes back to jail or seems to die. If your goal is no longer to tell that story over and over again, if you have trained your readers so that if they get that story again, they're going to flood you with letters saying, why is this just a retread of the story that you told last time? If you introduce that kind of thinking, then you have to keep upping the ante. Which I would argue leads us inevitably to the ramshackle state of comics today, where the Joker doesn't break out of jail and invent a madcap inventive scheme to bedevil Batman and Robin. Instead, he breaks out of Arkham Asylum by skinning the guards and maybe wearing their skins or using their skins as a Superman-style cape all stitched together. And his crime spree isn't to come up with something inventive to steal a priceless gem that's on exhibit at the Gotham Art Expo. Instead, his crime spree is to collect the eyeballs of little girls, school children girls. and you as a reader are not supposed to feel soiled by any of that. You're supposed to just read that and lap it up. Yeah, this is even more than last time. Give me more. Yeah, if I introduce a big bruising villain who beats Batman to a pulp, and Batman has to think really hard about how to beat a villain who's physically stronger than he is, well, then next time that big bruising villain will beat everyone he knows to a pulp and break his back so he's a cripple for life. Ha ha! That virus, that horrible, horrible, afflicted virus in the comic book industry, was created by Stan Lee. He was its original vector. And once you do that, you lay open the groundwork. First of all, you can say goodbye to those old days when a bunch of villains got their hands on a piece of kryptonite and decided on a clever way to use it against Superman, and he came up with an even more clever way to circumvent them. You say goodbye to that, and you say hello to the current world of comics, where two things are true. One is really bad, and one, I admit, is good. The really bad thing is the writers feel the need to up the ante. I thought 25 years ago there was a storyline in Batman where a villain digs up the coffins of Thomas and Martha Wayne and has their exhumed, rotting corpses in a death trap in front of Batman. Because no one had ever done that before. Yeah, let's dig up graves. Let's have rotting bodies that are naked in front of our viewers. Of course, the pinnacle, Batman was also the pinnacle where there was a call-in contest between readers to see different dueling for-profit phone numbers to see what the vote would be on whether or not Robin should be beaten to death with a crowbar by the Joker. Does he live or does he die? Not only was that introduced, and I would argue that is a complete negative, that is completely negative, but there was a positive side effect, which is runs. If you introduce the fact that change is on the table, that ante can be upped, that stakes can be raised, then all of a sudden runs have something to aspire to. All of a sudden it's not heresy to look at a 12-issue run and say, well, this is much, much better than the 12 issues that came before it. That would once upon a time have been not only impossible, because every 12 issues of Action Comics looked the same as every other 12 issue of Action Comics, but it also would have been heresy. It would have felt wrong to say, well, these are better. A good story, sure, a fun adventure of Green Arrow or the Flash or whatnot, but not better. Once you introduce that concept, you suddenly have the concept of issues that are better, more effectively done. And Marvel is the king of runs. I think that's why they created the Epic Collection in the first place, to capture runs on comics. That weird, almost undefinable spark that will suddenly make an average comic fantastic. I've read many, many Marvel runs, and I love them, and a lot of them are immortalized in Epic Collections. And I never know what I'm going to get on these Wednesday comic book videos, because in an unwise move, Michael and I agreed that he would do the picking. He would chart the course of Epic Comic Book Wednesdays. I haven't been able to complain about that for the last month, because he has picked great things, terrific things. We've also gone back to our roots. We don't just do Epic collections on Epic Comic Book Wednesdays, but we've gone back to our roots recently and just looked at some Epic collections, including the one that we're looking at today. I have the cover here. This is Captain America, Man Without a Country, written by Mark Waid and drawn by Ron Garney. Now, that is a great pairing right there anyway, because Mark Waid, it might not be particularly well liked in the comic book industry, but boy, oh boy, does he write great comics. Boy, oh boy, does he ever. And Ron Garney is great. Absolutely great. He's pricey now because he's so good. This was when he still did regular monthly comics. I think right now he's doing Berserker, Keanu Reeves' Berserker. And I was almost tempted to get the book. Is brainless, but I was almost tempted to get the book just for his artwork. That's how good he is. He also did, Marvel Comics got him to do some monthly Conan issues when they got the Conan rights back. He didn't last very long, but his issues are beautiful. I think he did Savage Sword of Conan, and they were beautiful. This was decades later, earlier. This was in the 90s, in the 1990s, where, as Michael points out in his video, I'll leave a link to his video down below, Marvel Comics superhero line was kind of languishing in the 90s. It was... writers had taken it into their heads to do all kinds of weird things with the marquee characters, and that never works out. That never works. And this is kind of an admission that doesn't work. Captain America, until just recently in this, he had been... Steve Rogers was 4F during World War II. He was given the super soldier serum, a prototypical mutagenic formula that made him into a paragon of physical ability. And then he got massive amounts of training from the U.S. government, and he went into war as Captain America, and then was frozen in ice for a suspended animation for years, and then brought back into the present day. And the line of Captain America right before this run started, the storyline was that super soldier form had turned toxic in his blood and was killing him, and then seemed to kill him outright. He wore a life sign enhancing body armor. It was ridiculous, absolutely horrible. You read it and knew you were reading something that was junk. That was just authors who invented a period in Captain America that you weren't going to want to revisit. And then all of a sudden, Mark Waid and Ron Garney teamed up for a new run of Captain America. And Mark Waid decided, as you can tell from this cover, he decided that he would do this character in plain and simple primary color terms. An unambiguous hero. And that Ron Garney would draw it that way. As Michael points out in his video, Captain America has always been an incredibly action-oriented character in Marvel Comics. Ron Garney decided to do that. Big double-page spreads, huge amounts of... Well, we'll show you. Let's look at some of these issues. Huge amounts of action-oriented perspective, so that you're never in any doubt that things are just blasting right along. Let me get you yeah, look at this. These are Ron Garney panels. Just incredible. Notice Captain America is recovering from that whole super soldier thing, so he misses his shield coming back, but he can feel himself getting better. Look at that. Look at that panel. That is just incredible. To do it from the thug's point of view, and he's thinking to himself, there's something new this time. A snap in the elbow, a tingle in the muscles, an old familiar feeling, and it's a good one. Mark Waid decided to write this character as just a simple, straight-up traditional hero. No tinkering around with the essentials, nothing like that, and no existential doubt. Instead, this is a Captain America who doesn't experience any of those things, and it is fantastic. Just incredible. For issue after issue after issue, he teams up with his old supporting character / girlfriend, Sharon Carter. He teams up with the Red Skull, his arch enemy. We get great covers like this. Look at that. That's just amazing. And it's a very familiar... Look at that. I swear, Captain America did not look like this, did not act like this for the 20 issues before these showed up. And then all of a sudden, as a reader, you're looking at it like this is a... Can I show you this double-page spread? Yeah, there he is. Look at that. Just amazing. Look at that. That is just incredible. Where the thugs in the crowd are saying, he's just one man. And Captain America says, I can save my doubts for later. Let's go. Just amazing. That Captain America had not existed for the issues right before this run. And then all of a sudden he was back. And he really stuck out. He really stuck out in the Marvel comics of the 1990s in this treatment. And it wasn't just a question of Ron Garney's artwork, although Ron Garney's artwork was incredible. Just amazing. Michael showed you this one as well, but it's too good not for me to show. That's just amazing. Captain America saving the Red Skull. And Ron Garney deciding just to do it in such a simple way. That is a very simple construction, but beautifully done. At one point in this epic collection, Captain America teams up with the 1990s Avengers. And it's embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing what the writers had been doing to the Avengers. You have Hercules, who's wearing a black tank top like he was Jean-Claude Van Damme. You have the team led by the Black Widow, but totally ineptly, unlike in the earlier run on the Avengers when she ran the Avengers and did it really well. The Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, suddenly has multifaceted insect eyes and big antennas growing out of her temples. Quicksilver has the wrong costume on. Thor looks like a Chippendales dancer and is wearing chains and leather and a bare chest and whatnot. This was, keep in mind, roughly the same time period in Marvel Comics where Wolverine was changed so that he didn't have the adamantium claws anymore. He had bone claws and no nose. And it goes to show the perils of letting your writers off the leash like this, which goes hand in hand with Stan Lee's version of how to run these comics. You let them off the leash and suddenly you get weird freak periods like this. That period of the Avengers is one of the lowest points in the title's history. And the only reason that it happened is because the company policy was no longer give everybody the Avengers they know. Don't deviate, in other words. You can be inventive, but don't change the basics. Which is certainly a lesson that Marvel Comics has not learned since they changed the basics only 5 years ago and tanked their sales across the board. I think I talked about it on this channel. I went into a comic book shop and looked at the latest Marvel comic issues and did not recognize anything. I've been reading Marvel Comics literally since Stan Lee launched Spider-Man, since he launched the Fantastic Four. I've been reading them for the whole time. I walked into a comic shop and saw a cool dude bro Oriental Incredible Hulk who loves being the Hulk, thinks it's the coolest thing in the world. I saw an Iron Man who is a black teenage girl, not Tony Stark. I saw a Thor who was a woman, because the original Thor was a drunken sot who wasn't worthy of his own hammer. And apparently, not only his powers, but also his name is a title that can be transferred to someone else. I saw Miles Morales as Spider-Man, not Peter Parker, and right on down the line, and I didn't see the Fantastic Four at all. They were just gone. Marvel, you would think, would learn a lesson that every time they do that, every time they deviate from the fundamentals, their sales crater. They do not appear to have learned that lesson, as far as I can tell. They're all in on loser characters like Ms. Marvel, who in Marvel Comics now is a teenage Muslim superhero whose superpower is the ability to freakishly engorge different parts of her body. Yeah, absolutely. I want to play that on the playground. And her books don't sell. They have abysmal sales. Abysmal fans do not like her books. And Marvel continuously pulls them because their sales are so horrible, and then relaunches them with the same creators, the same writer, the same artist, the same creative vision. They don't retool the thing at all. They know that it's a failure, and they just stick with it. I think probably because they've got $3 billion in movie money at the back of them, so that they don't have to worry about whether or not a comic book sells. This is the only explanation I can come up with for some of the radical fundamental changes that they are doing right now in their comics that are not popular with anybody. Nobody likes the fact that the X-Men have withdrawn to an island where only mutants are allowed. That is what Magneto does. That is what the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants does. That is not what the X-Men do. But for the last 3 years, that's what the X-Men have done. And none of them are in character. In their books, none of them are in character. There is, I believe, still a Ms. Marvel series going on. There's a Captain Marvel series starring Carol Danvers, even though it's been canceled a dozen times for low sales. And so on and so forth. Right down the line. These things are almost unrecognizable. This week, for instance, today, I believe, the latest issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, which was once Marvel's flagship book, its best-selling title, I believe that the latest issue of Amazing Spider-Man does not have Spider-Man on the cover at all. Instead, it's two characters who were made up last week on the cover, who are there because of, I don't know, because the writer wants to fundamentally change the book. And it goes right down the line. So I don't think that Marvel has learned this lesson. And they certainly hadn't learned it in the 90s, because you can look back and see, as people will be able to look back at the Marvel comics from this time period, they'll look back and see Devil Girl, Devil Dinosaur, and they'll see Squirrel Girl, and they'll say, oh, right, yeah, that's that period of Marvel Comics, the loser period. None of us liked it at all, and we're glad that it's over. And we're glad that Marvel had a renaissance and went back to its roots, went back to the basic archetypes that the fans love. Instead of telling those fans that love those basic archetypes that they are horrible people, get away, we don't want your business, don't buy my books, instead we're going to go for a new readership that hasn't been proven to exist. It'd be one thing if you knew that it existed, if your focus groups told you that we what we need to do here is switch. We need to junk these old fans that we don't like anymore. And we need to go aim our products at these new fans who are just waiting for products to be aimed at them. But those focus groups did not say anything like that. That second group doesn't exist. So if you do that, what you're going to do is walk your sales right off a cliff. And then blame the industry. Say, COVID, you know. Anyway. Marvel hadn't learned that lesson in the 90s either. Because this run is incredible. Look at see how basic that is? That nothing like that confidence in just the basic pleasure of seeing Captain America in action, of having Captain America say the right things. I'm going to do this because it's the right thing. They did that with this, and it was a joy, an absolute joy to see. There's a Michael K Vaughan showed you in his video. No, I want to show it too. There's in these issues feature the return of the invaders. Yes, there we go. The original Human Torch and Prince Namor the Submariner. Very nice. Look at that. We get a big close-up of them zooming straight at you, and then Garney changes the focus to way off in the distance so that we can get a sense of the power of that. Terrific. Just terrific. This run caught on with fans. They absolutely loved it. Marvel was flooded with letters from fans saying, this is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we want. These are thrilling. These are fun. This is Captain America you can not only root for but admire. We don't know what's coming next. Yes, it's the Cosmic Cube. Yes, it's the Red Skull. Yes, it's Hydra. These things are a little bit on the predictable side, but it doesn't matter because this is being done with heart. It's being done with, there he is, Captain America saying, let's go again. Just incredible. And also expert coloring. Look at that. That would have been less effective if it hadn't been colored that way. Under the blood sky there, the blood red sun like that. Fans flooded Marvel with letters saying, give us more of this. This is great. The Wade Garney run on Captain America, which is what everybody recognized that it was. I wasn't reading Captain America. I certainly wasn't going to read a Captain America who had blood poison and was wearing armor. But then I saw that first issue. I already was a fan of Ron Garney, so I gave it a try and realized right away, oh no, it's not just the artwork that's changed. The whole nature of this thing has changed. This is Captain America. I was a big fan of this run. And you look at the 90s, you're thinking, what I'm still thinking in the 2020s, I'm thinking, well, surely, okay, if you're a business, then if you realize that you've struck gold, your fans are loving it, the sales are up, your writer and your artist are very happy doing this, and I've told you they'll do it for years if you'll let them, then surely you won't muck around with that. Farewell to a living legend. This run of Captain America ends when Marvel decides for the umpteenth time to revamp their continuity, to let the writers bring in it's got to be bigger, it's got to be even bigger. So they have this massive, boring villain called Onslaught that no one can defeat, and all of these second-rate loser versions of the Marvel canon go up against Onslaught. They all disappear into an opposite, a missing dimension, except for a few. The Hulk stays in our dimension. The X-Men stay in our dimension. But most of them go. The Avengers, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, they all go. While fighting Onslaught, they vanish into some sort of interdimensional portal. Specifically so that Marvel could bring in ringers. And they did. They reinvented these characters. They all started with #1 issues, and they were universally horrible. The Fantastic Four had great Jim Lee artwork, but it was terrible. The less said about the Rob Liefeld Captain America run that started with the first issue, the better. It's an embarrassment. It was so bad. And right on down the line. Meaning, fans didn't like it, of course. They flooded Marvel with letters saying, why are you doing this? You had a perfect combination. Well, a lot of these titles were good, and you junked them. Why? Why did you do that? We don't like this. Please fix it. And as usual with cowardly companies like this, whether it's Marvel or DC, they leave a back door open when they do something like this. They always leave a MacGuffin in place so that they can fix it if fans don't like it. Why they would do it in the first place when fans have never liked it, I don't know. But Marvel left a MacGuffin in place to fix that Onslaught Heroes Reborn nonsense, and did, and brought back all of these traditional characters with yet another #1 for the Avengers and for Captain America and for Iron Man and for all the rest. And most of those volumes, I'm sure that Michael and I will be getting to those Heroes Reborn volumes. Most of them were wonderful. And for Heroes Reborn Captain America, they managed to bring back Mark Waid and Ron Garney. And that run is, if anything, even better than this one. So look at that. Oh, man. Just incredible. Just classic Captain America. So that's what this run is. It's just classic Captain America. And that is always a joy to me. But my joys are destined to be limited. Because this was our Epic Comic Book Wednesday for today. And as I mentioned, for the last month, Michael has been picking these great things that have such a joy to revisit. just a joy to revisit. But Michael has appalling taste. As any of you know who've watched his channel, you should definitely subscribe to his channel. He has appalling taste, or rather, I should say indiscriminate taste. He just hoovers up everything. And I knew, since I've been bitten before in this Epic Comic Book Wednesday rondelay, I knew that it was possible that these good choices would not last forever. In fact, I knew that it was certain that they would not. And I wondered how bad it would be. And our choice next week is pretty darn bad. Pretty darn bad. So, over the last few weeks, the two of you who watch our Comic Book Wednesdays have been lulled into a false sense of security, thinking we always agree with each other. I might ask you to look at some of our earlier videos, for instance, Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, or The Avengers, the World's Mightiest Heroes, to realize that we don't always agree on these things. And I'm afraid it's no more peace in our time. Next week, we will not be agreeing. So tune in for the fireworks then. But at least we'll always have Captain America. Mark Waid's Captain America. What a great choice. I'm going to wrap this up for now. I don't really advise getting this Epic collection because it has those 90s Avengers in it. If you're paying $40 for something, you don't, or however much this is, it's probably $240 now. If you're paying a large amount of money for this volume, you don't want to buy anything you don't want. And this volume it includes lots of garbage that it has to in order to fit this run. Better by far to go to something like Comixology and just get the issues that you want. But even though I can only partially recommend this Epic collection, that is singing high praise compared to what I'm going to do next week. So tune in then, and we'll see how things go. In the meantime, I'll see you later. Thank you, BookTube.